Lead quality. It's uppermost in most marketers' objectives. How can we improve the quality of response delivered? Does anyone want to go first?
I can.
There you go.
Okay. So I think it's very pertinent to point out that the definition of the quality of a lead is very different to so many people. If we look at the kind of diversity of the briefs that we get in, there's one thing that is sorely lacking at some points, and that is the absolute definition of a lead that that vendor wants to use. Now that can range from anything from just the accuracy of the data per country, right up to the kind of how many engagement points they've had. And what I really find is that any of our customers well, the ones that give us feedback for a start, but the ones that give us feedback to say that they did really achieve great quality leads that ended up in substantial ROI for them, they actually had a very big communication piece on their internal workings. So it's very hard for any of us publishers or lead generation suppliers to actually find out what quality is without seeing what journey that lead is going to take thereafter. If I look at some of our really successful campaigns, they are the people that have opened their doors, whether they book through an agency or whether they deal with us directly. They've opened their doors to us and say, okay, these are the systems we're using. This is the lead nurturing programs we have. These are the diversion routes that we have. If you think about so many of the large enterprise companies, they can go into so many different lead pots, and that's absolutely crucial for us to understand in order for us to make sure that it hits the pot that's going to get the follow-up that's best for them. Without that, we're kind of off to a slow start anyway, and you're flying rather blindly. It's the second point of that is the definition of quality needs to be there, but also, okay, what's that lead? Why do you want them? Why do you want to be in dialogue with them? Is it just through data acquisition? Is it because you have spent a fortune on some very whizzy automation software and think that you should put it to good use? Or is it actually for your most elite sales team to go out and look at? And it's really important for us to know that also. So for me, it embellishes the whole point of vendor and publisher communication, with agencies being the really good policeman in the middle to make sure that everything comes together.
Anything to add? Oh, and by the way, if anyone wants to ask questions of the panel while we go along, please do interact. Some of the best stuff last year came from you guys rather than us, so please do get involved. Anyway, sorry, back to you, Tom.
One of the first things I think we've got to do is to start dealing with age-related lead deterioration. This is the time it takes for us to deliver leads into customers. We're going to be introducing technology. We're in beta at the moment. It'll be live next weekish. And where we will work with all the main automation platforms, and we can drop leads that we generate straight into your systems. We did a piece of research, it must be 8 years ago now, as Knowledge Store, which was bought by TechTarget, and which is why we made IT Hound in the UK. And we'd ask users, how long did it take you to forget that you read a piece of content? And you're down within a day to losing about a quarter of them. Within 2 days, you've lost a half. And with 3 days, you've lost 3/4 of them. Perversely, it's your best leads that are the worst affected, because these are the guys who are doing the most heavy-duty research. And if you've read 8 or 9 pieces of content, the chances are that your recall of some of that content will be fairly hazy. You'll remember you were reading up about it. The specifics of it, maybe not so good. The next thing I think we've got to face up to is helping people with conversion tracking. One of the big issues for tech marketers is getting leads accepted by sales teams, getting sales teams to work around the output that's delivered. I have a certain amount of sympathy with the sales argument with this, because I spent 15 years in sales myself, and I never ever wanted to acknowledge the impact of a marketing campaign on my sales performance. It was all actually done out of the brilliance of my communication and my charm. Yeah, no, you're laughing, and quite a lot of people would say that was funny. So, you know, if you've got that kind of resistance coming at you, and there's that natural feeling from the people that you're serving as sales professionals that, oh my God, if you give me 1,000 leads, what are you going to do to my target? Then, you know, you need to be in a position where you can track what's happening. So we're going to start introducing solutions which actually allow direct tracking. So you can see in your CRM system.
Anyone feel this is getting in a sales pitch kind of route?
I'm sorry, I'll move on a little bit. I think those things are
talk strategy, top line's gone.
And the last point I would make is you really got to have quality content. If you want to have a decent engagement with buyers, I think content is the thing that people think the least about quite frequently, because you get it delivered from the US and you're told work with this. But you know, if you put the time into having the right content, you will have a far better engagement.
Okay, so
with that.
opening doors,
Yep.
integrating speed of delivery.
I think content's spot on. The more specific your content is, the better it's going to attract the right audience. I think it's a two-way street. I mean, publishers, we have to do a better job of providing you with the most likely leads that we deliver that have a project today. And you know, we're probably all sick of the stat of 70% of the buyer's journey is done online without engaging with sales. But I think we all agree that that's pretty much accurate. But the problem is our follow-up processes are still based on, we deliver 100 leads, your inside sales team calls all 100 leads, spends equal amount of time on those 100 leads, and then next week they go to the new batch. I think we need to move forward where we're saying, here's 100 leads, but based on the activity we're seeing at an individual level and an account level, here's the 30 that we think you should spend most of your time on. If you want to call 100, great, but call those other 70 2 or 3 times. But call these 30, 8 to 10 times, because those are the ones that are most likely to have a project. And also you're going to get, your inside sales team's going to benefit from that. So obviously content is important, but we don't have it all figured out yet. But I think using intelligence, and that's a big theme you'll hear today, I think from a lot of us, getting that intelligence into your hands, and then as marketers, what intelligence is Kingpin providing? What intelligence is TechTarget providing? What intelligence are you tracking on your own websites? What intelligence can you pull from Marketo or Eloqua? If you start combining all that together, you can really see who are the most likely accounts to have projects in your space, and I think that's where you should spend the majority of your time.
Have you seen that kind of level of integration?
Very, very few.
Okay.
So, I mean, like I said, we're getting to the point where we're doing a better job of providing intelligence on a weekly basis, but we still have a ways to go, admittedly. But from a fully integrated marketing platform where they're looking at all those intelligence, all those different forms of intelligence, I'd say you're still looking at 10% of the market.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I think sort of adding to that a lot of what Brent's just been talking about. I think that there is a big dichotomy between how US tech marketers do or spend their budgets in this marketplace versus what happens over here. And I think that the major difference is that there is always a rush to the bottom of sales accepted or MQLs, SQLs. And we see a lot of briefs which come through to us with one resource, be it a white paper, quite long, with please can you get us a huge number of leads off the back of a pretty dry piece of resource. And to all intents and purposes, that just doesn't really work anymore. In all honesty, I think when we talk to IT pros at Spiceworks, we have 7 million IT pros who use our network. They tell us time and time again that they don't like being classed as a lead. If they download your white paper, they don't like to be followed up by a telephone call straight away. We had Spice World, our annual user conference last week, whereby we actually had an unplugged session similar to this, where IT pros got up in front of their audience, and some of them were saying that they actually downloaded a free piece of software, a 30-day trial, and before the actual trial had finished, someone was onto the phone to see how they were getting on with their download. So I think there's an awful lot to be said about nurturing people through content, making sure that you're keeping people up to breast with different types of content, both gated and ungated, but not being too quick to try and whip out that lead early on to try and sell to it, which typically happens a lot more in the UK than it does the US, and also happens a lot more when obviously organisations are coming towards the end of a quarter, more sales leads are needed at the bottom of the pipe. Let's go and put this resource out and try and get something that works. Ultimately what happens there is if you don't nurture that content, you don't nurture that particular buyer, it's going to go to sales are going to call them, and ultimately what's going to happen at the back end of that is you're going to get an unhappy IT pro.
So what do you do in the situation that someone gives you a piece of content that you're not convinced by?
Very often we will actually turn around and say that that's not really going to work for them. Ultimately, some of the content that we get, we need to be in a position to actually say as a consultant to vendors to say that this isn't really going to work in terms of how, you know, the sort of performance they're looking for. And so we'll work with customers to try and understand what they're trying to achieve, but also advise them on the types of content that they want, think about having a different type of playbook that's going to resonate more with the IT pros, because that's what they're telling us, it just doesn't work.